Today, I want to show you how to make bass sounds like this. Using kHs filter table. Filter table is this amazing plugin that lets you use wavetables, like you would use in Serum, as filter shapes. For instance, I have M oscillator here as a test tone, and the default is this filter morph table. You can adjust the wavetable position, as well as resonance, cutoff, mix, and different phase modes. Here's some others. And this is an audio filter, which means you could filter any sound with a wavetable. So in order to get basses that sound like this, we're going to need 3 filter tables. 1 for the harmonic movement, 2 for the vowel movement, and the 3rd for the chordal effect. So to start off, I'm going to use grain delay. And I like to call this technique the grain metallifier, because this creates some really interesting metallic types of tones just using grain delay. I'm going to map the spray, frequency, random pitch, and feedback to 4 macros. And I'm going to duplicate this grain delay out about 4 times. If I enable M oscillator and start increasing the spray a little bit, the random a little bit, and the feedback, we start getting these really metallic sounds. I'm also going to use a multi-band dynamics just to tame the low end. Until we get a sound like this. And now I'm going to use this blank MIDI clip here and hit bounce to new track. Now I have this as audio. I'm going to right click and hit consolidate so that this is now normalized. And if I go into filter table, I can drag this clip into here and import it as a wavetable. If you're in Windows, sometimes you'll get this error, but all you need to do is right click the clip and hit crop clips and then drag it back in. Now this window should show up. Because I'm using a tone of C at a very low octave, I'm going to make sure my root pitch is C1. And then I'm going to go to fixes and then hit normalize frame peak, and this is going to basically maximize it. So now if I bypass or delete these grain delays and enable M oscillator to use filter table with, this is what the filter sounds like. Another thing I could do to get it brighter is go into the wavetable editor here, go to effects and hit automatic EQ, and then set the tone to 4.5 decibels per octave. Now, if we play it, it should be brighter. So I can adjust the cutoff and resonance. To get a wide range of harmonic spectral patterns. So I'll bypass this filter table for now, and the next thing I want to do is use an auto filter. I really like using the morph filter. I'm going to create an effect rack, map the frequency to macro 1, and map the morph to macro 1 as well, and set the resonance to around 50. Then I'm going to constrain this macro from the filter frequency 100 to 1000. And what this is going to do is create this low pass, band pass, and high pass filter that creates vowel movement. I call this the morph whumper filter. Now what I'm going to do is create an automation ramp that goes from 0 all the way up and enable this MIDI clip. And then if I play this, I get this nice filtered saw wave. Now I'm going to right click and hit bounce to new track. And I'm going to consolidate this one too. So now it's normalized. Now I'm going to use this as a wavetable for another filter table. Crop clip, drag it in, make sure that this is also set to C1. Normalize frame peak, and let's have a listen. Sounds good. And lastly, to create a chordal filter, I like to use this free filter called Synth. It looks like this, and it takes MIDI input. So I'm going to create a new MIDI track, and I'm just going to create a C minor 11th chord. I'm going to set the output of the MIDI track to track 1, Synth. Now, this is going to be filtering this saw wave generated by M oscillator, but it won't play anything until I hit play. Right now it's not very interesting because I only have one band per note. If I bring this up to around 12, this should span the entire frequency spectrum. And if I adjust the bandwidth, I can adjust the sharpness of the chord, essentially going from just a saw wave all the way to a really sharp chord. Now, another thing I want to do is set my gain scaling to peak, and this is going to make it sound brighter. And now what I'm going to do is automate this bandwidth from, we don't need to go all the way to 0, because around here is still pretty much a saw wave. Maybe around 10%, and ramp that all the way up to 100. So we get this progressive fade between a saw wave and a stacked octave chord. Then I'm going to right-click, hit bounce to new track, consolidate, normalize. I'm going to delete Synth, copy over another filter table, and then crop clip and import this as the last filter table. Make sure it's set to C1, and I'm going to normalize frame peak. Now this is my chordal filter, and it sounds like this. I can adjust the cutoff to tune it. So now I have 3 filter tables, and I'm going to just select all of these and group them together into an audio effect rack. Next, I'm going to put an EQ in parallel in this effect rack, set this to 100 Hertz, and then I'm going to map this to macro 1. I'm going to constrain the range from 10 to about 300, and this is going to be our sub crossover. This is going to allow all of the sound that is below this cutoff to pass through dry, so the sub is preserved. Then I'm going to copy this EQ8 onto the filter table rack, and then flip this low pass into a high pass. So I'm going to call this sub X over. Now I can map my other filter tables to different macros. I'm going to map the frame parameter of this first one, which is all of these random harmonic resonances, to macro 2. I'm going to also map the cutoff to macro 3 and the resonance to macro 4. For this one filter, the frame controls the cutoff, so I'm going to map this to macro 5. I'm also going to start renaming these. I'm going to rename this to WUMP. And I'm also going to name this first one to spectral position, spectral cutoff, spectral res. I don't really need to mess with the cutoff or resonance for the WUMP filter. And for this last filter table, which is the chord, I'm going to assign the frame to macro 6, which is responsible for the depth. So I'm going to call this chord depth. And the cutoff to macro 7, which is chord pitch. I'm also going to remap the chord pitch range to 1 octave. So let's do 600 to 1200, and that should be sufficient range. The last step here is combining the spectral position with the WUMP macro. And we can do this by using Shaper. I'm going to delete this point here by hitting Shift-click, creating a ramp up like this, mapping this to the spectral position, and then setting it to manual mode. And this will allow me to use both manual and depth to control the spectral position. I'm also going to set this to unipolar mode, and we can see how much spectral position is getting moved with this knob here. So I'm going to right-click and map manual to WUMP, and then depth to macro 8. I'm just going to call this spectral depth. If I play audio through it, it sounds like this. So right now it's kind of bland. We can use a multi-band dynamics to boost the highs and the mids going into this. We can use a hybrid reverb for the multi-band. Let's cut out the lows here, maybe up to like 300 Hertz, and then some of the highs. Let's bring this dry wet down. Let's set this to dark hall and turn the decay and size pretty low. And then let's set the pre-delay to a 16th note. So we get this cool diffused slap reverb. Now we can swap out our M oscillator for an actual synth. Let's use Wavetable. I'm also going to bring the hybrid reverb into this rack and the multiband as well. So I'm going to choose a key. Let's do E. I'm going to bypass the first two filter tables so we can tune this as a chord. Right about 91 sounds like E minor. And now if we enable the other filter tables, we get this really cool effect. Let's add some unison. Let's use classic. Let's do 5 voices. Or we can use phase sync. And also let's use envelope 2 to control the pitch. So that's how it sounds dry. Let's set it to mono and add some glide. Now we can really have fun with using the spectral depth and the spectral position. I'm also going to swap my sub crossover and spectral depth macros, but we can do this by creating another effect rack here, because I'm going to want to use this multiband outside of this effect rack in conjunction with a saturator. And I'm going to set the saturator to sinoid fold just for some extra thickness and loudness. And now I could assign spectral depth to macro 1, position to 2, cutoff to 3, resonance to 4, WUMP to 5, depth to 6, pitch to 7, and the sub crossover to 8. And then color code these appropriately. Then also we should map our spectral position to this new macro here. We can experiment with using different wavetables, like maybe a square wave. Or we could try some other cool wavetables. Or let's do FM harmonics. Let's use an LFO1 on wavetable position. The top end is a bit harsh, so we can use something like Soothe or a spectral compressor, or if you don't have either of those, you can use a much cheaper plugin called M Dynamic EQ. M Dynamic EQ lets you increase your number of harmonics or bands. Check this out. If I go down here into this harmonic section and just crank it all the way up to 100%, I get multiple bands here. And if I do band shelf, if I set it to band shelf B, I can set the slope to around 2, and then turn the Q down. Let's set our semitones to 6, so they're closer together, and then turn the Q down even more. And let's set our attack and release really fast. This is basically a really cheap soothe, and the threshold up. I'm going to put this before the saturator. And the great thing about this is it is zero latency, unlike Soothe or other spectral compressors. This entire rack, in fact, is zero latency. We could try some other wavetables. Maybe turn down the reverb a little bit more. Could also boost some of the high end a little bit more. And that's how you make a colorized Hypergrowl filter.